Welcome to Phoenix Rising, Mind and Body Healing. I'm Megan Bramlett, and for over 20 years I've used my hands and my heart to help others heal, reset, and rise. This podcast is your invitation to reconnect with your body, empower your mind, and embrace the sacred journey of transformation. I am so glad you're here. Welcome back to episode 2 of Phoenix Rising, Mind Body Healing. This episode is True Grit and why this podcast matters. So this episode is really important and close to my heart because this is an explanation kind of like how this podcast came to be and what this podcast really means. So friend, not even a friend, kind of a friend, my daughter's therapist, every once in a while I speak to him by myself. The other day, I was talking to him and I told him how I was thinking of doing this podcast and my reasons why. And he kind of smiled and he kind of said, I think it's perfect for you. And I said, okay, why do you think it's perfect for me? Because I'm not sure. And he said, there's a few different reasons. He said, one, you have a great deal of knowledge about the body. You have a great deal of knowledge about the mind, and you have a great deal of experience in life. He's like, and you have a lot to share. And he's like, I think that you can help yourself with some of your healing process, and you can help others with their healing processes by sharing who you are and what you've been through in a podcast. He's like, and I think that's probably your best outlet and the best way for you to get this out there. And he's like, number two, he's like, Megan, he's like, you do for others. He's like, you always do for others. And he's like, I said, yeah, but I'm not any different than anyone else. He's like, yes and no. He's like, you are, because most people, they get up, they might have a husband or children or wife or in children, and they get up and they do for their family in the morning. Then they go to work and they do their job. And then they come home and they do for their family in the evening. He's like, you get up, you do for your family in the morning, and then you go to work. And he's like, and then you're a massage therapist. And while you're doing massage, you are normally still coaching your clients. He's like, because I know you and I've learned who you are over the last few months. He's like, and you coach your clients. He's like, I know you do. So he's like, so you're doing for others from the minute you open your eyes to the minute you close your eyes at night. He's like, and most likely you do for others in your sleep too. He's like, that's just who you are. He's like, you don't normally do a whole lot for yourself. He's like, I've asked you multiple times what you do for yourself. And he's like, and you have a really hard time answering that for me. He's like, and I really think that this is going to be for you. He's like, this is for you. Yes, you're going to help others. And that's kind of your reason for doing it. He's like, but the real reason for you to do this is for you. He's like, it gives you an outlet for you to put your thoughts and your feelings and your healing out there. And yes, it's going to help others heal. And that's going to be an amazing way for you to help others. He's like, but it's also for you. He's like, and I think it'll be great for you to do. He's like, you can put your knowledge out there and your experiences out there and you can help others in the process. And you know what? He was right. I'm going to own that. It's for every single one of you that listens to know that you are in a place of someone who is going through that healing process still and will continue to go through that healing process, but is also someone that has a great deal of knowledge and also someone who wants to be here for you and wants to help you. So then I said, yeah, but I'm no different than anyone else. And he goes, but you are. He's like, you are, for one simple thing. He's like, you have this amazing softness about you. He's like, but you also have this amazing strength about you. He said, you have this strength. And he's like, and what it's called is grit. He's like, and I was like, yeah, but grit is not that uncommon. He's like, yeah, these days it is. He's like, your grit, the true grit that you have that comes from deep inside of you, that you just keep moving, that is not common these days. He's like, that is why counselors and behavioral therapists and psychiatrists are flooded and inundated with people, is because he's like, people don't know how to move forward when they get into situations or they get stuck. He's like, you might not always know how to, but you still do it. He's like, you still figure out a way. And he's like, and that is the grit inside of you that just keeps pushing forward. He's like, but you're also full of softness. And he's like, you're full of truth and compassion. And he's like, and those things along with grit is not common. He's like, so you have a possibility with your podcast to show people you can still go through all of these things and not have that hardness, but have that grit with a softness and a compassion and truth about you that is who you are, but also give them that chance to be that as well. So this space is for every woman, every man who's carried more than your share and still chose to rise. I know you're out there and I know you're listening. And if you're listening and you know someone else like you that has carried more than their share and just needs a little bit of lift, bring them here. Let's talk about that and let's look at that and what it really looks like for you. So that was my conversation with the counselor. It was a definite interesting conversation. I was not ready for that. The way he spoke to me about it was very eye-opening to see how someone felt about that with me. He asked me a few things and he said, how do you get through these things? He's like, do you feel that you've hardened? I said to him, I said, I've hardened in some ways over the years. I said, I know I've hardened in some ways. I feel more tempered. And I said, kind of like you get tempered, steel gets tempered by fire. I said, I feel more tempered, but I also feel softened. I said, so I have more compassion. I respect truth and I respect kindness more than I ever have. But I also don't tolerate things. That's the harder side of me. I don't tolerate BS. I set my boundaries and they're hard boundaries now. I don't shift my boundaries for people anymore like I used to. I have a harder focus. I'm more clear with my focus than I ever was before. And he said, well, how do you look at life? And I said, there's three ways of looking at life. And I said, I used to truly think about life in long term, dreaming about the future. I said, my future has been changed so many times that I said, the way I truly think about life now is what do I have right now? And how does that make me feel? And I said, I do look at the future. I do think about what I'd like to have and where I'd like to be in 5, 10, 15 years. I said, but it's more of a fleeting thought, I'd really like to be here, but right now I have this and I'm really happy with what I have right now. So I really look at the way things are now, and that's where my happiness is, versus looking what I could have and being happy there, because life will throw you curveballs, and if you're too caught up in the future, you're not looking at those curveballs and the possibility of them, and then when they come, you get completely sidelined, and you're like, what do I do now? So I said, I really feel like that has hardened me and changed me, and I don't look at the future the way I used to. I look more at what I have now, and I love what I have now, and I'm happy with what I have now, and I strive for better and more, but I strive with the happiness of what I have. So we were talk for a little while, and I realized that grit, I was thinking about it, and grit is not that person you see yelling and screaming and being this hard person and being cursing and being this. Grit to me is a person that just keeps going. No matter how tired they are, no matter how worn down, no matter how burned out they are, they keep going. It's about the grinding through things. But it's not just that. It's also the resilience, the softness, the truth, the boundaries, the love, and the leadership. Grit is not just about screaming and yelling and saying, I'm going to get through this. This is about also showing that tender side, that strength, but a strength in a different way than just pushing. It's about just being. And grit is, we were laughing about things that are not said anymore, like suck it up, buttercup. And those things are not said as much anymore. And we went through a whole bunch of them. And I said, I still say them to my daughter because I'm like, life is not easy. It's not easy. And if we are thinking it's going to be, then we're in for a rude awakening. And so for me, I never took life is going to be easy. I took it as it's going to have challenges, and you can either meet the challenges face on or you can hide from them, but they're coming. So meet them, get through them, change because of them, because there is change. You're stronger. You're a better version of yourself because of them, and go forward. Or you can hide from them, get stuck in them, blame, and continue to be right there in them, and then you don't learn from them. And he kind of like looked at me and was like, that is something that people don't see, Megan. He's like, that is what you have to offer, is that people don't see that that's your possibilities. And in that simple way of phrasing it, that is what grit is. So that's what I offer you: a place to share, a place to hear, a place to be, a place to rise. Each episode, each story, each truth, it's a reclaiming of you, of me, of who we are, of where we're from, of what we've been through, and where we're going, of the rise that we can create in our lives. We're building a library of real healing, not filtered, not fluffy. I'm not a fluffy person. That's the heart in me. I'm not a fluffy person. I love and I laugh. I curse. I tell it as it is. And I don't sugarcoat, they say. The podcast is a container for rising with others. I believe that I still have rising to do. Until my dying day, I will have rising to do. And I believe each and every one of you have rising to do as well. And I want to be there to help you rise from whichever situation you right now find yourself in, whatever healing you right now find yourself needing. We can help each other rise to the next level of our lives. Grit is not about not falling. It was never about not falling. Grit is about choosing to get back up with more truth, with more softness, yet more fire. Hear that. Grit is not about not falling. We're all going to fall. It's about choosing to get back up with more truth, with more softness, but with more fire. If you've ever wondered if you still have it in you, I'm here to remind you that you do. You don't have to do it alone. Thanks for being a part of this healing journey on Phoenix Rising, Mind and Body Healing. Remember, every breath, every step, every small act of care moves you closer to your next rise. Take care, and I'll meet you back here soon.